So now we enter the part on control measures, diesel and gasoline engines. So there have been a reduction in emissions of pollutants due to the hydrodesulfurization process, right? Which is the removal of sulfur from gasoline, petroleum, diesel by catalytic reductions with hydrogen to form the hydrogen sulfide H2S. So there's also improvement in the catalytic converter technology. So previously, there was an insufficient reductions of the nitrogen and sulfur-based emissions in the past, right, for diesels. But now we did better because of the improving technology. So in control measures, we'll be covering 4 parts here. Number 1, there'll be the catalytic converters. Number 2, there'll be the industrial process. And 3, personal protection, PPE. And lastly, also your mitigations here. So first, about the catalytic converters. So there's a two-way catalyzers, right? It involves the complete oxidation of the hydrocarbons in exhaust fumes to form water and CO2 here. Because of the airflow here that's very fast, right? Sometimes there's not enough time for the hydrocarbons, the fuels, the diesels to finish combusting, right, with the air here. So they just come out as a, just imagine hydrocarbons here. So we want to minimize this emission by having the catalyst side, right, the solid catalyst, as a function for them to react with oxygen there to combust it to form H2O and CO2. Now, this also oxidize it to form, this catalyst also oxidizes CO to form CO2 because CO is harmful, but CO2 is harmless to the human body. And this is a three-way catalyzers involve one additional step, right? It also reduces the nitrogen oxides to N2 and O2. Because NOx is harmful, but N2 is harmless, O2 is good. Sulfur will be oxidized to sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide. Right. The issues arises includes the depositions, to form the sulfides and the sulfates on catalyzers. I was mentioning about how metals, right, they forms the basis of the catalyst. The solid interface here, it just bond with the sulfur and forms the metal sulfur linkages there, and that will just clog all the sides of the catalyst. It makes it not useful anymore here. Not to talk about the lower turnover frequency. So due to the lesser amount of oxygen present, there is a reduction of sulfides and sulfates to hydrogen sulfide, which is very smelly and toxic here. Hydrogen sulfide H2S is a smell from the flatulence or rottenic. That's a smell of H2S here. So part 2, we go on to industrial process. So industrial process, in wet scrubbers, the particles and gases are absorbed by water, right, in a spray chamber. Now, water is always used as the main medium to absorb any gases. Just imagine going to your toilet bowl. Why there's always some water left here? Water can cause breeding of dengue, right, of the mosquito. But we need water because, right, inside the whole pipe is very smelly. So water is used as a sealant there for the gas not to be detected by our nostrils. Now, if there's many gases, they will just dissolve in water, and because water isn't volatile, so we don't smell it. So you understand? The water acts as a solvent to dissolve all the gases, smelly or not, doesn't matter, but it traps the gas so that we don't smell it. So in the same scenario, in industry, they use wet scrubbers, spray water, trap all these gases. So this is very essential for the removal of NOx, nitrogen dioxide especially, and the sulfur dioxide, because it's highly soluble in water. They are very polar, right, and forms the acid. So if we remove the sulfur dioxide, right, using the dry or wet slurry, right, you can use calcium carbonate because you just have a simple acid-base reaction, right, and H2S, which is also acidic, highly toxic, and occurs as a main byproduct in the combustion of fuels. So the hydrogen sulfide H2S is reduced to sulfur in the Claus process. You know the Claus is Clapeyron, the Claus process. Next, we go into personal protection, right? N95 face mask filters out. What does N95 mean? It filters out 95% of airborne particles of less than 0.3 micrometers, 0.3 microns, right, thick, which is the US standards, which means 5% will seep through the mask. N95 was made known, people become aware of it in 2013 during the very bad haze in Singapore. Now, but by European standards have their own kind of standard called the FFP1 that remove 80% of the airborne particles. FFP2 remove 94% of the airborne particles, and FFP3 remove 99% of airborne particles, less than 0.3 micron in size. So now you see that, right, this N95, because you only remove particles, right, and they're not so effective against gases and fumes, because the gas without particles, right, they just go through, right? So that's why we still smell the smoke. But at least the mask itself filters off the solid, right, that will cause more harm in our lungs and trap inside. So you have to think critically and clearly that you just don't wear a mask and it filters out gases and solid. Sometimes one, sometimes the other, sometimes both, right? I like to use the respirator because you just wear like the whole mask, like the scarecrow in Batman. So your voice becomes very muffled, but it does filter everything for me. Surgical mask, right? The surgical mask that we now wear predominantly to prevent spread of the coronavirus. These are useful to prevent the spreading of germs. They can filter out these caused aerosol particles. When we cough, we don't pull out the mask and cough, right? We cough under the mask, don't affect others. But these are not effective for PM 2.5 filtering. So this surgery mask, right, the blue and the green ones, no effect against solid, just goes in and PM goes in. So the full respiratory masks have exchangeable dedicated filters for different classes of pollutants. So you have cartridges that you change how much filter you want. It's just a filter paper, right? You have the different size, right? You have the type 1, 2, 3, 4 filter paper in your chemistry laboratory. Next time, take a look here. Just like that, your cartridge also has the different pore size to filter out the different size of the particulate matter. So some of them also use like silicone and rubber seal to prevent leakages. Just stuck to your face. It's very, very warm. I wore it when I was working in the industry here for the lab. Costly, can breathe easily, but just very leceh, cumbersome to take out. But it does allow me to breathe fresh air. No smoke, no smell, no PM. So I appreciate that. It's always a trade-off. Next, we talk about mitigations of outdoor pollution. These CO2 release caps, there's a cap on how much CO2 should release, licensing, certificate trading. The countries talk about, oh, if your GDP is this much, right, this is the amount of CO2 you can release. If you want to release more, you can buy it from other people, so that the world as a whole, right, will not give up too much CO2 compared to the limit that's set. So this cap and trade is like a system for controlling the carbon emission to the atmosphere and the whole world basis and other forms of atmospheric pollutants. The upper limit is set for the amount of CO2 for certain kind of businesses or organization, right, they can produce. But it also allows further capacity to be bought from other organizations. So it becomes like economic theory. It's not just, okay, this is the amount I have, but because there's money associated with it, companies will be incentivized to say, oh, if I do not use my limit, I can sell. That generates more money for me. So people are using this like a carrot to try to lower their carbon emission, and you can sell this excess to others and earn more. So in my own philosophy, I think the world is really more capitalism in most part of the world here. Money drives the world in these businesses. Hopefully not educations, right? So because of this exchange, right, if you have more, you can sell this cap, can sell to other organizations who haven't used up their full allowance yet. So these are very good economic incentive, right, to use alternative energy such as the sun or the biofuels. And you have also tax rebates, tax deduction schemes, government subsidies, right, try to reduce emissions of carbon. For some government, they also encourage it to use and invest in public transport system, like in Thailand, in Estonia, or even Sweden. They encourage a lot of public transport. Driving, even rich people, driving there is not a status, unlike most parts of Asia, if it's a conspicuous spending. So Europe is somewhere that we could learn from in terms of this era of life. So what else can the government do? They put in high taxes on cars running on gasoline, right? Toll system. Singapore have this ERP here for road use, as well as promoting car sharing services. So more incentive could be put in place, like the purchase of use of electric or hybrid cars that do not run on fossil fuels. We could have lower taxes, even government subsidies for this kind of cars, even if they do not look so sexy or they don't look so good looking. There are also some kind of implementations of the odd and even carbon, where only half the vehicles are permitted on roads on alternate days. And we've seen that in the Mexico City, the capital of Mexico, 18th in Greece, and also Beijing, right? You know, Catholic number here, odd even number. But again, there are loopholes. So what people do is people buy two cars with different Catholic numbers and they can use every day here. But anyway, it's still certain restrictions to minimize carbon emissions. There's also increase in planting of trees here and bushes, right? So these are some of the few ways of control measures that humans can take, governments can adopt, and the society can learn from to minimize carbon emissions. And next, we'll move on to indoor pollution.